For now, let's learn how to pitch your business idea. And I am thrilled to introduce you to one of our local pitch experts, Carly Forcade from UMass Amherst. And Carly is a program manager at the Berthiaume Center for Entrepreneurship, and also a program director for the Collegiate Summer Venture Program. So Carly, welcome.
Carrie, thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see all of you on this lovely Tuesday evening. Thank you for calling in, wherever you're calling in from, whether it's your dorm room, your classroom, or wherever you are in the world right now. It's good to see all of you. As Carrie said, my name is Carly Forcade. I'm the program manager for the Berthiaume Center for Entrepreneurship and the program director for the Collegiate Summer Venture Program. So beyond all those titles, who am I? What do I do? I am excited to be here really this evening to talk to you more about pitching. I've experienced pitching as a former student entrepreneur. I've been in your shoes competing, going from having no idea what on earth I was doing to winning every pitch competition I've ever done. And really today what we're going to do is go through and walk you through some basic pitch tips on how to do that, how to talk about your business, how to get started kind of just doing your first pitch competitions, tips and tricks along the way. And then the second half of the session is really going to give you the opportunity to network, meet other community members and other entrepreneurs or future entrepreneurs in your ecosystem who are in your shoes or possibly starting something right now as well. So this first part is I'm going to jump in and talk a little bit again about those tips and tricks and ways to get started. You're welcome to take notes. If you're welcome to pop things into the chat that you want me to address later on. And then that second half is really going to give you that time to practice. Don't be nervous if you don't have an idea just yet. Please stay on. Again, that networking piece is really important because you want to be able to meet people outside of your dorm room, in your community who are doing those things that you maybe are thinking about starting now. So to kick things off, I'd love it if you could first introduce yourselves in the chat. Pop your name, your school. If you have a business idea, maybe pop a little bit of your venture tweet in there because there's only so much space in the chat. But tell us a little bit about you, who's here on the call. And while you're all doing that, I'd love it if we have any Grinspoon faculty to kind of unmute and introduce themselves as well. So I'd love for you to meet your other ecosystem partners and people on your campuses that are available to support you as well. So if you have any Grinspoon faculty on the call, please feel free now to unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'll start. I'm Diane Sabato. I am the EI faculty representative at Springfield Technical Community College.
Hi, I'll go next. I'm Kim Sherman, and I am the, the faculty representative from Westfield State University. And I apologize because I have to drop off about 6:30 to go get my son, but didn't want to miss any of this if I could.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Huckman. I'm with Amherst College.
Thank you to the three of you for being here. Do anyone else that I missed? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for being on this call. We really appreciate you. Startups, again, if you're at any of those universities or colleges, look at who's on the call. If you don't already know them, get to know them because they're phenomenal resources on your campuses. I'm going to jump right into this presentation, but before I do so, please take some time to introduce yourself in the chat, using the chat box, just again, with your name, school. If you have a business idea, pop it in so we have the opportunity to get to know you better. So that's the whole reason why we're here, is to support you, help you grow, and help your business advance in the right way for you. So while you're doing that, as we're getting to know you a little bit better, we're going to jump into the slide deck and we're going to kick things off from there. Thank you, Michelle. Okay, so we're going to click forward, I think, to the next slide. Perfect. So we just went around and did some quick introductions. You'll have a chance to hear from each other, unmute, get to talk to each other in a few minutes. Next up, we're going to jump into Pitching 101, where I go through a bunch of pitch tips and tricks and things that you can use. You're going to have that time to do pitch practice. And then in the end, you're going to do a little bit of sharing out, have the opportunity to talk about what you learned, and we're going to talk about some future opportunities that may be coming your way down this pipeline within the next month or so. I think we just did those two, so we can go on to the next slide. Okay, pitching. Ideally, that's why you're here today. It's why it's up on the screen. But I'd like to see if I could see a show of hands, how many of you have pitched before or have any experience pitching? See you. I'm not seeing too many hands. A couple hands. Okay, so a few of you, but not all of you. How many of you have an upcoming pitch competition that you're prepping for now? A couple people, okay. And then how many of you are here to just learn about pitching in general, just learn to get some basic pitch tricks and tips? A couple of the same. Okay, thank you. So that's helpful to know kind of who's in the room. So it looks like we have a nice mix of all three of those things. Some of you may just be looking to learn a little bit. Some of you may be looking for those pitch tricks and tips, in addition to preparing for an upcoming competition. So why do we pitch? I think that's an essential thing to kind of focus on before we jump into how to do it. And really a lot of the times it's kind of to start a conversation. It can be for investment, or if you're looking for funding, whether that's equity free, meaning I think about sometimes as free money or no one's taking ownership of your business. It can be for equity or someone's taking ownership of your business. It could be to put your business idea out there. It could be for mentorship. There's a lot of different reasons why people pitch. And I think before going into any pitch competition, it's essential to really think about, why are you doing that in the first place? What are you looking to learn? What are you looking to get out of this experience to make sure you're honing that going into that? I want to stress as well, you may have seen Shark Tank or one of those other shows online, other pitch competitions. And I do want to stress they don't always tell the true story, because a lot of times eventually they're going to want to see your financial statements, your proof of concept, validity. If you're claiming you're making $100,000 in sales, they're going to want to know, okay, how are you doing that? Let me see some bank statements so I can actually validate some of these things that you're working on. So I do want to stress sometimes it goes beyond what you're seeing in the first place. You're going to hear no a lot of times as an entrepreneur. So that's something kind of be prepared for, and not look at that as a failure, but also look at it, okay, what can I say differently or pitch differently so someone can better understand my idea, or I can convince them that this is something that I'm working on. It's going to make a big difference in the world. It can be terrifying. You may have heard many times that public speaking is one of those largest fears that people have. And pitching is one of those ways of going through public speaking and talking about something that's incredibly personal, something that you're working on that you probably care about deeply. But really, the more you do it, the more you get comfortable doing it. And you really want to make sure your story about your venture is eventually shining through. Every pitch contest you're going to do is different, whether in terms of the timing, the focus, the judges that are there, the format, whether it's online or in person. It's going to differ, but they all involve an element of storytelling and telling your business. And you want to make sure that you're tweaking your pitch for whatever audience or whatever competition you're going into, and you're not just copying and pasting whatever you did last time. Because if you didn't win money, you may want to make sure you're getting your editing that, but also making sure I'm paying attention to who's your audience, who's in the crowd, who am I pitching to, and why, before you're going into that experience. We'll jump to the next slide. So the focus of every pitch should really focus on your problem and the solution. At the end of the day, it's really about your venture, your solution to an important problem in the world. And you really want to make sure that you're educating your audience about the problem in a quick and relatable way. Especially if you're doing a 30-second pitch, a 1-minute pitch, you don't have that much time to get into the nitty-gritty of what your business is doing. You want to make sure you're quickly addressing these two basic things before you get started. So can anyone tell me in the chat what they think 2 things, if there was any 2 things that you had to include, 2 steps to a great pitch? And you're welcome to unmute as well as you're going through. Any brave volunteers? Or what's one thing? What's one thing you think you have to have it? There we go, Jack.
I think something to hook listeners and get them interested, whether it's a story or great statistics, to make sure that they're interested from the get-go.
That's great. Anyone else? Explain significance of the problem. That's really important. I like that a lot too. As we're going through, I'm going to take it a step back before we even get to those things. I think, Mitchell, you hit on it a little bit. But But really the two important things are, Michelle, if we go to the next slide, is building a great business and then telling people about it. That's really the element of every single pitch that you're ever going to do. It's really those two simple things. But really, if you take a step back, that first step is essential. You need to have a good business model. You need to have a good business. And then you need to tell people about it. That second step that we're going to talk more about today. But I do want to stress that before you get to step two, you need to make sure that you're honing in on step one, that you're talking to customers, you've gone through the process of customer discovery, you're fleshing out your financial plan, talking about cost structure and all of those really important critical things that going into building a business. And then you get to step two, where you're telling people about all this cool stuff that you're working on and building to really pitch it in these competitions or upcoming things. So I just want to stress before we kind of get to any of the other things we're going to talk about today, that you're really making sure you're honing on part one in addition to working on part two. So another tip I really want to recommend, and this one's a little bit harder to quantify or break down, but be interesting in whatever way that means to you. So that could mean that you want to make sure that you're grabbing the attention of your audience, whoever that is. This, how you do this again is up to you. It could be your passion, your pitch style, your tone of voice, your humor. If you're not funny, that's not the time to start making jokes, but if you are funny, please feel free to weave it in. The traction, maybe you have some massive number of sales where you've talked to a lot of people. That's a fantastic way to bring that into your pitch. It could be your team. Whatever you want people to really walk away with after your pitch is something you want to make sure you're really practicing and honing in on. So after you've gone, you really want to make sure, okay, what are they going to walk? They're going to walk away with this one thing that they really remember about you, and they're going to tell people about it. So again, going back to part two, making sure that you're growing and going from there. And I always think of that quote, people forget what you say, but they never forget how you make them feel. So that could mean the data that you're giving them. Say, wow, they're solving a really, really big problem that I didn't even know existed. And they're doing it in a really cool and innovative way. I'd like to help this company or work with them or help them grow in a different way. So think about that as you're kind of practicing and honing your pitch, especially making sure that's true to you. So I always love this slide because I've seen it time and time again. Not because I've seen it exactly like this, but because I've seen it in pitch competitions. I've seen it when people are up on stage. You want to make sure that, again, we're going back to that be interesting piece. You're not going to cram your slides with tons of content and information. You want to make sure there's images, there's pictures, there's something engaging that people are actually paying attention to that they're going to walk away with. Otherwise, you're not really reaching that audience or that target that you're looking for in that pitch. So people aren't going to listen to you if they're bored. If you're bored right now, you're really not going to remember anything from this whole pitch competition except for, hey, that girl talks a little bit about pitching. I picked up a couple things maybe. But you want to make sure that you're doing things engaging and interesting in a different way to make sure, again, that they're remembering you and what you were talking about. And I want to go back to those basics again of just like how to tell a good story. Because I like how one of you were pointing that out earlier, talking more about your pitching. It's really telling a good story. It's telling this experience and walking them through your customer's experience to get to know it better. So how do you do that? How do you tell a good story? And it goes through the basic things you may remember if you ever read a book or saw a good movie. You're focusing on those key aspects like characters, conflict, plot, and that victory, that moment at the end where things get really good, you're all excited, you're yay, that had a fantastic ending. So I'm going to take that and apply that to really looking more at your pitch and how you construct it. And you do that with your customers, your characters. You're really looking at who are you serving, their problems, the conflict. What's this big problem? Or I've heard it called that hair on fire problem. How are you solving it? The plot, what are you doing for them? That's significant. What solution are you solving? How are you solving their problem? And that victory is the value they get, the difference you've made for their business. So this is a kind of a storyline that you can use in crafting your pitch to make sure that you're kind of addressing these key things in a quick pitch. If you're a 10-minute pitch, you really should make sure you're going beyond this. But if you're looking at a 1-minute, 2-minute pitch, these are things that you can easily craft into that story to really make sure, again, you're hitting on those judges' criteria and they're able to understand quickly and efficiently what it is you do, what problem are you solving, and really getting to the heart of your business. I want to stress show, don't tell. So this is a huge number. That seems fantastic. What does it mean? You really want to make sure that if you have data, you're backing it up. But again, you're not just making big claims, but you're also kind of showing that traction that your business has, the sales you've made, the customers you've spoken with, bragging about that data or work that you've done, and not assuming that they know anything about your business before going into it. And if you don't know those things yet, go out and figure it out. And it's okay if you don't have all the answers, but start to kind of have those answers as you're going through. Jargon. So depending on your industry, you really want to make sure that your judges understand, again, really going back to the basics, they understand what your business is. If you're using acronyms, if you're using kind of things that may not be, it may be industry specific and your judges are not from that industry, do not assume that they know what you're talking about, because otherwise, again, they're going to walk away. You just did this fantastic pitch, you thought you killed it. And I've heard time again in judges' rooms where they're talking about this cool idea and they're like, oh, I really think it's interesting, but I have no idea what they're working on. That's the worst news that you can hear, because you really want to make sure, again, at the basics, they understand what it is you're doing, because that's how you win. That's how you go about getting that funding or that mentorship or whatever it is you're looking for to move on. So make sure you're really clear. And it doesn't have to be, it's not a lecture or a research class or anything like that, but it's a quick understanding to capture what it is you're saying. And this is something that we're going to practice later today to see how people are really understanding what business you're working on, how you're conveying that. And then if you're actually hitting that kind of conversation well, people are walking away with what you want them to walk away with. Be yourself. This kind of goes back to that be interesting slide that we did at the beginning, making sure that your pitch is true to you, because a lot of times investors or judges, they're investing in that team. They want to know, who's this person, what's their background, what's their educational skills, their personal skills, what can they do to really make this business come to life? If I'm going to say I'm going to build the next rocket ship, I better have some kind of background in something that makes me qualified to do that, or prove that you have a team member that's going to help you do that well. So you want to make sure you're backing that up. They can invest in you and your business to help it grow, because businesses are going to change. Startups are going to iterate. They're going to pivot a million times again. But that team, if they're strong, if they're going to be innovative and work hard, that's something really important to show to the judges that you can get things done. And again, kind of going back to the idea of the audience, for every single pitch you do, I kind of recommend that you're going to go look at that judge's scorecard. You're going to ask questions about who's going to be in the audience. You're going to find out what's their background of the judges. What do they do? Are they familiar with your industry? If you're going into, say, a tech pitch and you have a tech background and tech judges, that's when you can brag about those. You can ignore what I said about jargon, get into that, talk about those nitty-gritty pieces. But if you're going into a pitch that's more broad and can have judges from different industries, that's when you want to tweak that pitch to make sure that you're really speaking the language of whoever it is that you're pitching to. And you're hitting on the heart of that scorecard to make sure they're understanding, you're hitting those goals, and making sure that you're getting high scores for those opportunities for you. Practice, 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 practice. Please do that. Do not wing a pitch. Time goes by really, really quickly when you're up there, or really slowly, depending on how you feel about it. But again, you want to make sure that you're hitting on all of those things that you've prepared for, you practiced for, but you're going in strong. One of the things I'm going to talk about later is recording yourself while you pitch, having pitched to friends, have them pitch it back to you. You want to practice this until you know it. If you have a roommate, you want to practice this until your roommate knows it so they can pitch it back to you. It really want to make sure that you're not going into a pitcher opportunity for the first time. That's not a practice round. You're ready to own that, go in comfortable, confident when you do that as well. So this slide kind of goes through, again, if you have a longer pitch opportunity, these are some of the things that you want to hit on. You're welcome to screenshot it or we'll send this out afterwards. But these are some of the key things that we hear from judges, from other competitions that they're really looking for in each of those pitches. So you want to have a quick company tweet. What are they talking about? Your purpose. What problem are you solving? What's your solution? And that could go in with what's your product, if that relates. Why you, why us, why your team, your financial model, your cost structure. I would also include your business model structure there. Why now? What's the urgency to get this done? Who's your competition? Your market size, What traction do you have to date? So again, that's kind of that prove it, show me that data that you have. Who's your competition? Again, your competitive advantage. Why are you different? I never, ever, ever want to hear any of the startups on this call so they don't have competition. Every startup has competition. You really want to think about, again, what are they doing right now instead of what your product is offering? Where are they going? Because that's your competition. And then finally, an ask. That's going back to kind of one of the earlier things I said of why are you there? What are you looking for? What do you need for your business to survive, to move forward next? And making sure you're remembering who are you pitching to and why. Those will be really important when you go through that final step. And this goes through, again, at the end of your pitch, you want to make sure that you're having that really strong ask and making sure you're clear about what you want that money for and what you're going to put it towards. And then breaking through, kind of breaking down that timeline of where are you going to go next? Where are you going to grow and go from here? That's really important to have in there so they know, okay, if I invest in this person, this is where their team is going to go next. Something we get asked a lot is how to dress for pitches. And I typically say, make sure you're dressing either business professional or for your venture. I've seen some really phenomenal pitches of science-based ventures that are kind of coming from the lab and they're wearing lab coats, or food-based ventures and they're coming in chef's hats. So really making sure that you're bringing your team, yourself, your energy to that pitch to make sure you're doing it strong and doing yourself justice and showcasing who you are and who your team is. I love questions and answer slides. If you have, if you're doing a pitch with a slide deck and not just a verbal opportunity, you want to make sure you have those so you can address anything you weren't able to cover in your initial 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 10-minute pitch. You're adding into the slide deck so you come prepared for questions, you've thought about it, you're not just on the spot, you're ready to go. And so going back to the idea of data, I love when people bring in good data, but make sure that you're never making anything up. If you get asked a tough question that you don't understand, if you don't have that answer just yet, do not make up an answer because you never know the industry that your judges or background that they may be coming from. And if you give some wrong answer that you just made up on the spot, that's going to have them start questioning things that you said earlier. And you want to make sure, again, that they're trusting what you're saying, that you're coming across in a way that's professional. But if you don't know the answer to something, it's more than okay to say, I don't know the answer to that, but let me get back to you. And that's a really good opportunity for you to actually go ahead and do that because it helps you build your network, make long-term connections with these judges. Maybe you didn't answer that question then, but maybe it'll open a door in the future to show that you kind of had that follow through and that post conversation to help you grow in the long term. Recording and watching yourself pitch is another really great tool to help you grow. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, but it's something I really recommend doing because it's a nice opportunity for you to see, how do you pitch? Do you use your hands a lot? Do you touch your face a lot? Do you use filler words like or like, or any of those things as you're going forward? Some people talk really fast or really slow, and you want to get comfortable with, okay, these are things that I can work on and grow, edit yourself a little bit, and then go for the next pitch even stronger and better. And some things I want you to keep in mind, so online pitching versus in person. When you're in person, sometimes we'll have networking opportunities after that. Make sure you stay for those. Even if you didn't win the competition, you want to network with the people in the audience because you never know who's there. I've had personal experiences where I've won money or I've lost money, and I've kind of had an opportunity and had someone come up to me afterwards and say, oh, hey, I thought that was a really interesting idea. Let's talk about that gap in funding that you're looking to get. Let's talk about how it can help you grow in the long term through mentorship or other opportunities. So you never forget who's in the audience, who showed up to support, especially if they don't have money on the line. They're just here to hear from cool ideas or learn more about what's going on in the ecosystem. Those are people that you want to learn from and grow with and make sure that you're talking with while there. It's a great, great opportunity for you. Body language. So again, we talked about that with the recording. That's a good opportunity for you to practice using the stage or practice with a microphone. Make sure you kind of know what that looks like. Find out if prototypes are allowed, if you can use a slide deck or pitch deck, what the audience will be like, if there is an audience, if it's closed or open. Those are all good things to know going prepared to help you feel more comfortable going into that stage. And then online, Many of you may be doing some online pitch competitions. Make sure you're not reading off the screen. So I'm looking over right now, looking over my notes, but this isn't a memorized pitch. This is something that I'm just talking through some tips and tricks that I know because I'm jumping off the slide deck. But if you're reading through, it's really obvious to tell if you have a script that you're reading from. It doesn't really come across as warm or authentic. You want to make sure that you're really showcasing your venture best. Try to memorize your pitch. Don't read it off of a screen. Again, making sure you're dressing professionally or for your venture. Have a timer in front of you because you have that opportunity. You can have your phone in front of you to make sure you're staying on time. I recommend standing up whenever possible. So right now I'm trying to use like a standing desk. I've used boxes before because it just really changes your diaphragm and it makes you just feel more confident going into a pitch when you're standing. And then check your background to make sure it's not dirty. If you're doing it in your dorm room, there's not laundry or anything like that in the background. Before this presentation, we were kind of going around my office trying to make sure that things worked well. So I closed the screen to make sure you could see me. But making sure you're testing that, whether with a friend, a colleague, or community member to help you make sure that you're going to the best. But remembering all of these things are like, they're tips, tricks, and things, they're icing on the cake. But the most important thing is that business model, that business plan, that idea that you're working on, and then going through and kind of making a great, fantastic pitch to talk about it with people so they can help you grow, maybe get some money or support to help you move forward. So I just breezed through that as fast as I could. Hopefully you learned something new. Please feel free to take my email, my LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with you and talk with you further. This is not done. We're going to jump into part 2. But before we do that, I wanted to see if we had any questions before we jump into that too. Okay, we have a quiet group. Happy Tuesday night though, but it's good to see all of you. Part 2, I also wanted to see from our Grinspoon faculty or anyone else on the call, are there any things that I missed or things that you'd recommend that you feel like should be in pitches or pitch tips that you've seen that you'd recommend for other people as well?
Carly, I think you did a fantastic job. I echo the practice, practice, practice. And I think recording yourself is invaluable because it's such a great tool for self-assessment and giving yourself feedback. It's really a good thing to practice with.
Thank you, Diane. It's hard to do. Like I've done it before. I've watched back presentations I've done. And sometimes I'm just kicking myself because I'm like, oh, I wanted to say it like this or I did this differently. Yeah. But it's just really helpful to see what you do to learn from next time.
And I think one of the key points that you addressed when you talked about recording yourself, I did Toastmasters for a number of years, and verbal pauses are what we notice when we record ourselves. There are people who say like about every other word when they're pitching in a 90-second pitch. It completely detracts from the content of what you're saying. If you can just practice breathing, pausing for effect, eliminating those verbal pauses, then it really makes a huge difference in your presentation.
Thank you for that. I remember when I used to be doing pitches, I would run out of air. Well, so I would literally be gasping. That was one of my tells for myself, was like, I need to I've had to put in pauses, especially after big data. Like if you're saying people are dying from this problem or there's a huge life-changing impact, you shouldn't just be going on to your next sentence after saying something like that anyways, but you want to make sure you give people a second to resonate with that, to feel that, and then go on to whatever your next point is. But thank you, Diane, for that, because young me needed that when I was running out of breath at pitch competitions.
Carly, I'll echo Diane. I thought it was a great presentation. The other thing I love to see is that passion and that energy that people with their ideas and founders have. And I know it's not always easy if you're wearing a mask in an in-person pitch, but smiling and bringing that energy that you feel toward it. Maybe not if you're going to talk about someone dying, Carly, but having that smile on your face, showing other people that you really are passionate and love what you're doing is extremely important.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Carly, I'll just add one other thing, kind of piggybacking on some of the earlier comments. I agree. I think you covered everything. I think it's also good to pitch to other people, to friends, to family, and then ask them what they took away from it, you know, what they heard, because to your point, if you're like speeding through some of the things that you think are most important, and you ask whoever you've pitched to, a friend or your roommate, hey, you know, what would you remember from this? What do you think the main idea is here? And they can't tell you. That gives you a good idea that maybe you need to slow down or emphasize things a little bit differently, cut stuff out. So it's also good to hear other people's takeaways when you pitch.
Kim, I'm so excited you said that, because it's exactly what we're going to do next. And we didn't even tell her that, so it's fantastic. That's exactly what we're going to do next, because we want you to have that opportunity to practice pitching and to really practice. I found that skill really helpful, as uncomfortable sometimes as it can be, but to pitch to people, whether it's friends or that friend that's going to give you, I like to say, like that friend that's going to tell you like there's something on your shirt, or give you that tough love feedback, not the friend that's always going to say, yeah, everything's perfect, everything's great. You really want, especially when it comes to pitching, you really need that friend that's going to give you a little bit of a kick in the butt to help you go and grow. But I think, okay.